My name is Liliana Barzola, and I love this scene in Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium where Mahoney says, 30 seconds? Well done, now we gotta wait. And she's kind of acting like it's gonna be forever having to wait these 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Megorium says, no, we breathe, we pulse, we regenerate, our hearts beat, our minds create, our souls ingest. 37 seconds well used is a lifetime.
Oh, thank you.
And I loved your kitten sounds there too.
Hello, beloveds. Welcome to the Woke Wisdom Podcast with Alexandra Loves. That's me. I'm here with my furry cosmic guardians, Cyrus and Bisu, joyfully coming to you from the Moon Garden, where wisdom is nourished, awakening is embraced, and fun is encouraged. I'm so excited to welcome my guest today, but before I do that, I wanted to share the best way to acquaint yourself with this podcast, and that is to listen to the very first episode called Orientation at some point at your leisure. And if you have any specific questions for me or about the podcast, you can text us at the Woke Wisdom Podcast number. That's 601-301-6974. Or, of course, email us at wokewisdompodcast@gmail.com. And all of that is in the show notes. Also, I wanted you to know that I produce and edit this podcast all by myself. And I'm not a producer and I'm not an editor. Not on the technology side anyway. And there are mistakes. There might be a couple of strange sound levels in this episode. I'm sorry, I'm learning, and as time goes by, I will get better. So thank you for your patience and evolving with me. And if you like what you experience on this podcast, please help me by sharing far and wide with your friends, online, in groups. And what is most helpful is if you subscribe or leave a shining review on Apple Podcasts. Apparently that is the best place to share to get your podcast seen. So thank you for that. And for this episode, I'd like to share a trigger warning. Though we don't talk about the details of domestic abuse, we do touch on the subject a couple of moments in this episode. So let's do this. Reverend Liliana Barzola, an intuitive since childhood, uses her gift to enable individuals, couples, and organizations to find clarity and direction. She is a first-generation successful mestiza, lesbiana, entrepreneur. She has conducted over 20,000 in-person and phone intuitive sessions and taught over 600 students since 2002. Her practice, Lotus Lantern Healing Arts, it's in the show notes, has an international clientele including individuals in Australia, Italy, Germany, all over the world, Japan, Canada, Venezuela, the continent of Africa, and the UK, and every single US state. She's experienced the adventures of marriage, divorce, death of loved ones, chronic illness, single parenting, and overcoming the trauma of domestic abuse. These things have leveled her, humbled her, tormented her, and forced her to grow. She channels a deep reservoir of compassion and laughter to help you get through it all too. And my favorite thing about this woman is that she loves to play. Let's take a deep breath and welcome in Liliana Barzola. My first question, it's the most important question. If you could be an animal or non-human, what would it be and why?
Oh man, any kind of bird, I think, just to fly and just to have that freedom to go and play.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought of you as, or experienced you as a super playful person. I think it's why people like to be around you and work with you, collaborate with you, and just be in your life.
Thank you. And I love that you're saying that, because when you said that for me, I also thought about my trauma. I don't know why, but of like wanting to run away with the flyaway, right? Because it's like, also, I'm like, oh yeah, also I want to be able to like get out of bad situations. I mean, you're like, yeah, you're so playful. I'm like, and also I like to run too.
It's good to know yourself. And let's face it, sometimes it's a good thing to have that reaction. Sometimes it's better to run away rather than experiencing something worse.
Yeah, trying to make it work. Been there, done that.
Yes. Haven't we all? It seems like a rite of passage. We'll get into that more, but it seems like a rite of passage, that trying to make something work that obviously, if you looked at it from the outside, it's not going to work.
Oh my God. Yes.
Liliana, this year, did you learn anything that was really significant about yourself in this past year that you'd like to share with us?
God, I'm really bad at these questions. I'm like, let's dive right in. Yeah, I learned that I really need to practice getting angry, because I'll just tell you that, like, I'm 42 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My body's breaking down.
Okay.
I don't have the mobility I used to have. And so I've been on this big journey. Like, people talk about COVID and COVID weight, not moving around and stuff. And I feel like it's not even COVID. It's just that I can't work out the way I used to. And so I've been doing like holistic biomechanics and Pilates and different things to try to get into my body and like feel like so I have really tense toes. That's what I figured out.
Toes?
Yeah, my toes are like, I walk on my feet and my feet are really tense, so much so that I have holes in my shoes at the top of the toe. Yeah, because I'm always like, I think it's from years of belly dancing and like being on the balls of my feet or like doing all this weird stuff with my feet. I also notice my hips go up and down. Like I'll be sitting and I won't have both hips down. I'll have one up, like I'm in a belly dancing position or something.
What? Oh,
and
my
holistic biomechanics person and my Pilates person is like, you need to change this about yourself.
Yeah.
And so I've been like, when kids are little and they have all this mobility and their muscle groups are all working together. And I've just, as I'm getting older, I can see my patterns are a problem. Yeah. And so part of that has been exploring, like, as we become perimenopausal and our hormones change, learning about my spleen and my gallbladder and my liver and all of these organ systems that I've needed to detox.
Right.
And one of the best ways to detox the liver is to get angry.
Oh,
and so I'm not, okay. So my Pisces, so I'm very, very Pisces, and my Mars, which is the planet of like passion and anger and expression and sex, is Piscean. So when I get really mad, I will cry at you. So I just go, I'm so angry. And it's so frustrating because I can't like harness the fire. And so I've been practicing getting angry for my health. And I just want to say that what I've learned is people who you think of as archetypally angry, that angry person, I think to myself, I do not want to be an angry person. So
I hear you. I hear you. There's that whole stereotype of women who the system sees as Black being angry. I get it. Yep.
I don't want to be that angry person, just like you're saying. I don't want to be seen like that. But I've also been in relationships where people are angry all the time. And I have partners who are angry all the time. And so I'm like, I do not want to be that angry person. I'm like the positive, playful, we'll figure it out kind of person. Yeah. But I'm kind of damaging my liver when I don't go into my own anger because people around me are angry all the time.
Wow.
So the person who is the stereotypical angry person, I'm not talking about righteous rage like you're talking about, which is like every reason to stand up for yourself and be in your truth. I mean, like when you're having that kind of like partner that's just grumpy at you all the time, or they're snapping at you all the time.
Yeah. Yes.
So that person isn't feeling their own anger. Mm-hmm. They're just taking it out on everyone, right?
Right.
So I've had to switch in my brain, like, okay, Liliana, don't worry. You're going to be actually less of an angry person. And you might even be better at standing up for yourself, which is awesome, if you can feel your anger. So my thing that I've been doing, which I'm just sharing because maybe it helps somebody, maybe it's your jam, maybe you've got a totally better technique than me. Please comment and tell us if you have a better technique.
Word, please do.
But your liver is kind of like under your rib cage on your right side. It starts there. So sometimes I'll just put my hand on my liver and I'll say hello to it. And in Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love, that was so popular, I can't stand that book.
Yeah. I saw the movie. It was very like cheesy rom-com, throw up in your mouth kind of.
Yes, exactly. I mean, love Julia Roberts, but other than that, when she goes to, I think, was it Thailand? She has, one of the elders tells her she needs to learn to smile into her liver, which is great because, you know, the liver is anger and joy. It has those kind of emotions. And that's why you have happy drunks and angry drunks, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm definitely the happy variety.
I believe
like
that.
A jolly person.
Oh, I believe that about you. So I'm saying, like, don't smile into your liver, but like really talk to your liver about what you're angry about.
Yeah.
And so it goes like this. I just go, I am so angry about, and I just pick something.
Wow.
So when I'm thinking about being angry, I'm like, I can't harness. Remember, I've got that Pisces thing where I just cry every time I'm mad. I can't harness the rage. So I can't like throw things and kick things, which I wouldn't want to do anyways. But I can't even learn martial arts because I'm so like, I don't want to push that person. You know, like, I have trouble going like, ha, you know. And so while I'm dealing with this issue that I have, put my hand on my liver and say, I am so angry about. And I think, you know, like people get up in the morning and they do their gratitude lists and everything. I'm like, fuck that. I'm making a list of everything I'm angry about.
Oh my gosh, you're speaking to my soul right now. This is what my morning pages look like in the last like 2 months, by the way. Is just like I opened something up around and for those of you who don't know, morning pages is it's a method of getting up and journaling and just dumping out whatever's in your mind. But what you're talking about, Liliana, is like I hit this place this winter where I realized I was really angry about a lot of things. And like my morning pages were just lists of anger, what I should have said, why I'm angry, like there's some fuck yous in there too. And it's, you know, morning pages, you're allowed to be like childish as you want. It's a really great cathartic exercise. But a lot of it, as I was reviewing some of it, I was like, wow, I'm just there's just anger in me that I didn't even know was present in me. Stuff from like high school, Liliana. Yes, I'm on the way to seeing a therapist. I know for those of you out there who are like, yes, you need to go see a therapist and process your trauma. I know that I'm on my way, but yeah, the fact that you're saying this, I need to hear it.
If Josie was here, she would say astrologically, of course, you're still angry about that thing in high school because we just had the Venus return. So it was like everything from relationships past were coming up. People were running into their exes. I was doing sessions where people were mad about something that happened when they were 13. So it might actually be your brilliance.
Yes, it's my brilliance.
It's your brilliance. And I love the morning pages thing. So there's a technique that you're sharing right now, people listening can do. Like, if you're like, I can't hold my liver and get mad, you could do your morning pages. Yes. See what anger comes out unfiltered. Because I'm imagining you're letting yourself do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing for me. And you're saying that you're actually touching your liver and speaking to it specifically about what you're angry about, right?
Yes. And you can even be like more relaxed than that. Yes, I am. And also you could just sort of hold it, say hello to it, just to kind of know you're kind of saying, I think we avoid our liver. You know, we avoid this detoxifying organ that we have here. It's why we get tummy aches. It's why we have trouble digesting fats as we get older. Yeah. Or we get more upset stomachs. Like the things that I could have when I was in my early 20s, like milkshakes galore. And like, I think about drinking that now and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's French fries for me.
There you go. Right. So if you want to eat French fries again, start really expressing that anger with your morning pages. You're working out your French fry opportunities with that.
French fry opportunities. I don't know if any phrase has ever made me so happy than French fry opportunities. Thank you for that. I'm so happy. Well, let's make that a hashtag, French fry opportunities. Oh, okay. But okay. So this is something that I realized. So you and I both have had experiences with partners who are either physically or emotionally violent. And
Mhm.
I realized that one of the reasons that I don't express anger, there's many reasons, but one of the significant ones is because one of the manipulative things that I experienced over and over again was a partner, so somebody intimate and close to me, that was telling me that my feelings aren't real or not valid or, troublesome, or I brought it upon myself. And all of it was just not true, of course. But at that time in my life, I was assuming some sort of that person had more power, or they knew something, or, some of that classic story around being in abusive relationships. And I realized that I really got trained to swallow all of my emotions. And even now, and anger is a really important, obviously it's important to express all your emotions, but anger specifically, because you're talking about this like detoxifying process, and I realize, like, even now, if somebody asks me how I feel, I'll never forget. I was doing a photo shoot, and the person was doing the thing where they video you and get your reaction to the pictures. And I was like,
Mhm.
of course, like, put this on your wall, like, get more clients, and like, I'll help you. Like, I'm so excited to help you in this way. And you can video me if I cry. I don't care if you video me. Like, let's do it. And she was like, well, how do you feel? And I would not say how I felt.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
pictures were beautiful. They're all over my website and my my website now. And I felt myself like feeling a whole bunch of things, but not talking about it and not showing it. And I noticed that pattern in my life. Even in relationships now, people ask me, how do I feel? And I'll have to talk about what it is before I can find out, like, is it safe to feel here? Okay,
Yeah.
now I'll feel.
I love that you shared that. I will also share that my not getting angry or not sharing anger or how I feel is because I haven't wanted to set off abusive partners.
Yes.
There's a repercussion if I say I'm disappointed. And those types of people are usually so good at being defensive. So you can't even ask for a basic thing. Like, I remember I spent 7 years in relationships saying, could you just be nice to me? Is there any way you could just be nice to me? That's it. That's all I want. I don't need roses or diamonds, or just be nice.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
pathetic and sad.
It's so sad.
And I know I'm not alone.
No, you're not. I've been there.
Yeah. So
Wow.
the other thing that I want to say when you're talking about emotions and like
Yeah.
what it is to be human, there's that actress, Sally Field. I love her characters. Like, if you think about her in Steel Magnolia, when she's at her daughter's grave
Yes.
and she's like laughing, like crying, like yelling, it's like that is the perfect expression of what the internal experiences of being a human, where you're like,
Uh-huh.
oh my God, I loved her. Thank God my daughter was here and I got to have all this special time with her. Fuck, why is she not here? Why did God take her from me? Ah, like that's what
Yeah.
it feels like.
Yes.
So I have an understanding, and I share that thing with you of like, yeah, sometimes you got to like be in a very safe environment to be able to understand what it is you even feel.
Yes. Wait, what movie is it? Steel Magnolias?
Steel Magnolias, yeah.
I think I remember that scene, and I'm going to link it in the show notes because I think it's really important for people to see that. It's very cathartic. It's very um oh, I wish I remember there's an archetypal character I used to be in theater. There's an archetypal character that sometimes shows up that that's like either super happy or super sad in like old sort of like comedy theater. And the
Cool.
characters always swinging back and forth between one or other. And I remember even auditioning for one of these characters once, and for like half an hour, my job with other actors was to go back and forth between laughing and crying.
Oh my
So
God.
I remember like feeling so amazing after that. And they're like, are you okay? Are you
Wow.
okay? And it wasn't just about me being convincing. It was just like, oh no, I went through a process. I wasn't even acting at
Wow.
that point anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, you're making such a good point, because I have a lot of actors that call me, and like when we do energy work and stuff, I'm always like, you are a psychic, like you are channeling and transmediuming stuff, and you all need these tools because like it's a lot of emotional work that actors do. It's amazing.
Yes. And it can make people a little crazy if they
Yes.
if they don't have the tools, right? I've seen it happen. I've seen people throw chairs across a dressing room before.
Oh, sure. Oh my gosh. Like when that person died, I can't think of his name. Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger.
Yeah. And he was in the middle of playing the Joker. I was like, of course. Like,
yeah, that wasn't surprising.
That was not surprising. It's like, we need to care for our actors and help them because whoa, like you bring that energy on. It's hard to differentiate what's you and what's the character.
Right. And especially in these times right now, it's like we're lacking one of the things that for a lot of us anyway, especially for, I live by myself but anybody, even if you have a family, you're isolated. There's something to be said about, yes, it's important to source from yourself. And we also, I believe, are meant to live in communities. And, some people might even say tribes, but I'll go with communities, communal societies. And there is something to be said about getting reflection back to you from other human beings.
Yep.
And that got cut, if not in half for a lot of people, in like to just a minutia of human interaction. And yes. I've noticed, like, as I go back into the world and do some more social things, I'm still being cautious now, but as I do more social things, I've noticed like the way that people express emotionally and the way I'm expressed emotionally, it's kind of tentative. There's like this veil that's on right now that just people don't know how to be around each other. And if we're in that space where even just, emotions that aren't as big as like, deeply expressed anger or fear or whatever, if we're having trouble just with like the basic emotions, then what is being suppressed? And I know that not everybody is at home holding their liver or like in front of a mirror being like, I'm pissed at this, I'm pissed at this, this is so amazing yet. I know not everybody's doing that or whatever the version of that word is.
Yes. Okay. You make such a good point because I agree with you. Like I had a friend standing in my kitchen the other day and she was talking to me and I was talking to her and then I just had this spaced out moment, completely lost my train of thought. And I was like, I'm sorry, I just don't know how to interact anymore. Like I forgot what I was going to say because it was like, it was a sensory overload to be around a new human in my environment. And it was just like, whoa. And I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I was a little bit relieved to have the time off, just not from work, but like from just all of the social things. And I was like, okay, I'm curious. What is this going to be like? And then probably a year and a half in, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go out there. And just the feeling I want is like that outdoor music festival or like dressing up to go out to dinner. Like there's all these freedom things that I connect with, like going out, but that programming of having to stand 6 feet apart or stand on the X at the supermarket or cover my face. That has been so hard for me and I'm programmed into that. And so I don't know how to reverse it. And now I feel like I don't know if I want to go out there. Like after all this time, I'm like I got exhausted waiting for that, So now I'm just like, well, maybe I'll just stay in here forever, which that's going to be a whole nother kind of therapy.
Yes. As somebody who hermited, there was a few years ago, I was called to do a lot of really deep emotional and spiritual work through an initiation process. And so I really chose to be a hermit for like almost 3 years. And right when I was starting to come out again is when we start getting stay-at-home orders. And so now that there's a little more opportunity to go out, I am finding myself being a little too comfortable in the like, I don't ever have to go out. Like it's like there's a part of me that wants to. And then there's like the whole outdoor festival thing you're talking about. Yes, I want to dance with people to really good music in either dressed up or in a costume and not care about anything. I want that deeply within my soul. But there's also this part of me that's like, I feel like the safest place and the place where I have the least conflict and least weirdness, social weirdness is here. And so maybe I don't ever have to go out and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's also, so I think we're finding a balance. Like you're saying, we're like, oh, it's okay. I don't need this as much as I thought I needed it as much. But there's also like this muscle that I am personally starting to rebuild of like just even going to my Pilates class with a person who is just one other person. It's like, okay, like what does this feel like to be standing here and having my body in space and having a conversation? It's like, it's all new again.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go back super quick, if that's okay. Let me know if I'm taking us off your.
No, I want to hear everything you have to say.
I wanted to go back to when you were talking about, we were talking about partnerships and bad relationships. I feel like this is really up right now because, again, plugging Josie and her astrology practice, she's really teaching me that a lot of relationships that started between 2008 and 2012 that weren't healthy are like coming to an end because of all the Pluto Saturn stuff that's been happening. So it's kind of unavoidable. So for example, couples that started off not super healthy, it's like, even if you're desperately trying to stay in the relationship, it's almost becoming impossible.
Wow.
And so I have a lot of people that are going through that right now. And one theme that I noticed, I don't want to make this about men and women. So I'm just going to say, like, oftentimes the yin partner will tell me all about the masculine partner, like all of their trauma that the masculine partner has. It's kind of like a thing. So especially if there's abuse happening, the female partner will say to me, okay, I want you to help me with my partnership. And before I tell you anything, I want you to know my masculine partner has had this childhood trauma and this childhood trauma and this divorce, and this woman that hurt them and this terrible mother and this terrible parenting thing. I mean, like as if you're a therapist, you're listening to a therapist tell back the historical trauma timeline, man. Right?
Yeah.
But I have never, and then they'll go on to say, and then this is how they abuse me. And they never use that language, but it's like, you know, tantruming, yelling, screaming, making me feel unsafe, you know, not letting me express my emotions without walking on eggshells, that kind of thing. The masculine partner, or like, let's just say the abuser, never, ever comes to me saying the same about their partner, meaning that partner who's the abuser, they totally come to my practice. Like I get lots of people who are in that realm, and they might know it, that they do it, or they might be unconsciously doing it. But either way, they never begin.
Bless you for holding that space, because those people need healing too.
I have to do the work of saying, when you do this, this is how it feels to your partner's body. And because they've had this kind of trauma, this is what's the wound that's reopening every time.
Yeah.
But also the reason I'm pointing that out is if you are over functioning like that in a relationship, that is parenting, not partnership. And we really need to work on our livers if that's us. Guilty. Over here.
Yep.
Over functioning queen over here.
Yeah.
So back to the anger thing.
Yeah.
Let me just say that I am so angry that I'm the last person living in a picture that I have. I have a picture. I just took it out the other day, and there's my mom and my beloved sister and one of my dearest friends, Marissa Mayer, and me. And this is back when I was pregnant with my son. So like 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I remember calling my friend Marissa, who's still alive at the time, and saying, I just found this picture and you and me are the only two surviving people in this picture. I am so angry about that. Wow. And I just took it out again. And I had that epiphany, like, oh my God. And now Marissa's gone. So I am so angry that I'm the last person there. I'm so angry that my kids have to get sick. Like my daughter was sick last night. She was puking all over the place. And I was like, God, why do children have to suffer? Like, I know gratitude around their lessons and them becoming adults and building their internal assets and all that stuff. But like, no, I'm actually angry that kids have to suffer and get sick. Yeah. This is how you do it. So I'm just giving you an example of like that permission I'm giving myself to just be angry. I actually feel better just like saying that out loud or to myself in my mind. And when I clear that energy, I might sit with that for 15 seconds. You'll find that if you're just sitting with it for a couple of seconds, it actually shifts. And it doesn't mean like suddenly I'm happy or I feel gratitude. But I don't feel so heavy. I just feel like, okay, I feel a little teensy bit lighter.
Okay. I can do that. I hope people listening will try it. That sounds like something accessible. It doesn't sound like a hard thing to do, and it doesn't take a long time either. I think that's a perfect something tool for your medicine box to try and start with.
And I know there are people that are better at this than me, which is why I'm sharing it with you, because I'm actually so bad at this that I'm like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Right.
And I just want to talk really quickly about Eastern medicine, Chinese medicine. I am not the expert. I have incredible clients who are doctors and they're the authority on this. But I want to talk about the spleen and the liver and the gallbladder for women, especially as we get older.
Okay.
So this was taught to me by Deb Carson, one of my acupuncturists who I love and adore. And she says, so your spleen is on your left side. Yeah. So it's kind of like on your tummy there. And you can put your hand on it, say hello to it. So there's this dance between spleen and estrogen. So we have a lot of estrogen. For those of us that are in female bodies, we have a lot of estrogen when we're young, and it gives us oodles and oodles of patience. So like, you know, when think about it from a mothering standpoint. So if I'm the exhausted 40-year-old mother and I have a nanny come in that's like in her early 20s, you'll just see like she can sit and play with the kids and have, you know, and even when I think about my relationships in my 20s, I was a real nurturer. I'm less of a nurturer now. Okay. So that patience is, you're right. It's not a great word. It's more nurturing. There's like this hormone in our body that really is letting us nurture everybody. Okay. And so as we get older, and the other thing about the spleen, in my world, we say the spleen can either digest food or thought. Wow. So when you're up at night thinking and worrying, you're kind of depleting your spleen. And that's like, you know, when you get like really stressed out and you can't stop worrying about something, you don't want to eat. Yes. Okay. So the spleen, and this is going to be your thing, Alexandra, loves movement and dance or working out. So a great remedy to support the spleen is just move your body. You know, if you're sitting there, you've been worrying on the couch for 3 hours that you're getting nothing done. Yes. Just dance for one song. That's it.
Get out of my head, Liliana.
Okay, so this is what's amazing is the color of the spleen. This is what Deb taught me, is like a golden color, like honey. Yes. Yellows and honeys. And so when I'm meditating with a bunch of women, and it's a lot of ages, the younger people don't like yellow. They just like, I'm like, oh, imagine yellow all around you. They'll kind of be like, you know, think about that little old lady, like dressed from head to toe in yellow. And you're just like, what is going on? Even her shoes are yellow. Well, the spleen is so healthy. They don't really need that tonifying color. But if you think about honey, and so she says, imagine you're Winnie the Pooh and you're just swimming through honey. When you feel depleted, this is a good meditation. Imagine the honey color because it really nourishes the spleen. Think about the nourishing nectar, the honeybee, that sort of thing. Now, as we get older as women, if we think about it from a mothering standpoint, your teens, you're perimenopausal, your teens are becoming adults. Yes. You're supposed to give less to that age group.
Dude. This is what a lot of lifetime nannies burn out around this age. I've noticed myself, like I work with kids all the time, and I've noticed myself, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, I'm 39 now. And I've noticed myself, especially in the last 3 years, where I'm like, I'm not a play nanny anymore. Like I still play with them, but it feels so different than it did like 6 years. I started working with kids more than 6 years ago, but it feels so different. And I was like, what, is there something wrong with me? I went through a whole what's wrong with me phase. And then I just accept it. And I still find other ways to like have fun with them and everything, but it's a very different experience.
So we can turn you into a crone, a grandmother. And I know you're not that old, right? But you could just be like, what would grandma do? Right? Like, she probably wouldn't be on the floor playing with the kids the same way, but she could be nurturing, give them a hug, whatever. And so maybe you're giving yourself permission for your nannying style to change. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like kids love their grandmothers. Yes. You can spoil them, but then be like, go find something to do.
Yep. Time's up. Go on. You have all these toys. I'll watch.
I love it. So it's common for perimenopausal women to call me and say, I can't take care of my husband anymore. For example, like I just can't be in this relationship where I'm having to nurture at this degree at this time. So what you can do for yourself, what I do for myself is, again, imagine the honey meditation, understand this is a natural way of life, and not guilt myself, right? Because I feel so bad. Like I'm not the person I used to be. I'm not that nurturing giver anymore in that same way.
Yes.
And it's okay. And then if we come over to gallbladder and liver, which are part of this whole spleen configuration, they're decision makers and they're workhorses. So if you're overworking, which you and I have worked our whole lives a lot, our livers get wore down.
Okay.
And so when we are letting ourselves get angry and we're giving ourselves a break, we're getting our whole digestive system to change so that now we can digest our experiences, right? Like the traumas that I've had, like I just shared, things I'm angry about, become more digestible. I can process them. Doesn't mean I feel better, but it feels less like I'm in a shock trauma when I see that photo of my friends and think,
oh. And this is, so I want to make sure I'm understanding, because I understand the spleen part, but the gallbladder, like what's the practice that you're doing with the gallbladder?
Totally doesn't make sense, right? The gallbladder and the liver are a team. You can think of it like the workhorse and the general.
Yeah.
So the gallbladder makes decisions, and then the liver works. And so when you get fixated on a project, you're inspired to do your podcast. Maybe you could be up all night editing because you're just so excited about something.
Yes.
That's your liver. Your gallbladder also, as we age, it's starting to say, I don't know if I want to work for this person anymore.
Right.
It's just differentiating where you want your life force energy to go. And there's so much more to the liver. It houses a part of the spirit. It's about your purpose in life. I'm not the expert. I won't talk, but just if you even Googled this, you would learn some things that around sort of like the emotion of the liver, the emotion of the gallbladder from a Chinese medicine standpoint, and you can apply it to your daily life like we are here.
Yeah. And you know what? I realized I went through a lot of attitude changes. That's the best way I can put it. Attitude changes in the last couple of years. I did a lot of collaborations and worked with some awesome, amazing people, but the setup of our work, like how we were doing the work, didn't quite, I wasn't in alignment with it. And I came out very angry in some of those situations. And I felt like, yes, it makes sense to be angry, but the level of anger that I was having and everything attached to that anger, I was like, where is this coming from? Like, it just was not the greatest setup for collaboration. Like we learned, all those people I'm still friends with, there's no like bad blood or anything. It was really, I knew that it was a really personal experience. And some of those things kind of loop back. Now it's years later. Some of those things kind of like loop back in my mind, and it spikes my irritability and my anger so high that I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I realized like this year, especially when I started sort of peak, I took like a hiatus off of my work for almost a year. We did Sola, which was awesome. It felt really good in my heart.
Yay, Sola.
Yes. And that will come back again, and still
we're bringing it back.
But that whole year I didn't really produce a lot of my own work. And as I was going through that sort of like, hiding, I realized like, it's important for me to do my collaborations differently. And when I was going through like, I want this, but I don't want this. This is appropriate for me. And this is what's not appropriate for me. Money and no money, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I realized that at the core of all those things, the very seed of all of my sort of standards and boundaries that I was creating for myself was I want to be involved with things that are aligned with me. If they're not aligned with me in any way, it's a big problem. And it doesn't mean I'm not flexible. It just means like to say yes and have an agreement to do something I really don't want to do or shouldn't be doing, like literally sets my nervous system on fire.
Yeah, you can't do it anymore.
I can't. I literally can't. It's not about Alexandra, show up and hustle and just do it. I've already done that forever.
Yep.
And it burnt me out and made me really sick. Now my body is like anger. Now I experience anger and irritability and all this nasty stuff. And I realized like it's either aligned with me or it's not. And I can't push on that anymore.
Yes. Yep. That is fucking profound. Like I match you completely in like what is in my highest good, what's an affinity with me. I can't push through anymore. I'm too old for this shit.
Exactly. People say, naturally people know this to some degree. Because I hear people say that all the time who know nothing about like how energy moves or Chinese medicine or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm saying there's a biological reason even that you and I can't do it anymore. And so we can even just get like excited about that. Like, sorry, clearing my liver. I can't.
It's not possible.
And when I find that I'm angry and it's not getting better, because that can happen too, then I need to ask myself how I need to be supported. It's like, okay, then I just don't have enough support. And so what does that look like? I might need to phone a friend. I might need to go on a walk. I might need to baby myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this is what we're talking about is radical because we do live in a system in which, and I see a lot of these clients too. I know you see this, and we both work with a lot of women. We both work with all sorts of people, but especially women. And I have noticed, like right at that turn of end of 30s, beginning of 40s, where I'm talking to women that are like, I hate my job. I've hated my job for a long time, but they're not in that moment. They're not in a position where they can just quit tomorrow.
Sure.
And I definitely feel that in some levels of my life. And it's like, we live in this system that there's not, in the United States anyway, we don't have a system of like, take some time off and take care of yourself. Like you have to have a nest egg for that, or you have to have somebody else willing to take care of you, and that puts strain on them.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about is a really radical act, because when we're stuck in a cycle or stuck in a job, stuck in these things that we don't want to do. Okay. So then you're nervous, you're getting sick because of it. Your nervous system is like, you know, what happened to me, it's shorting out. It could affect your relationships. Being stuck in this, doing things that don't align with us and we don't want to do, can change us in ways that can repel joy from our life.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we got really, as a nation, got really focused on this,
yes, yep.
How would that change how we work and the ability we have to support each other and how we design our systems is quite radical.
I'm with you. Let's envision it. Let's keep holding that space for that. Cause God forbid you get sick in this country. I mean, there's a joke that like how Americans deal with illness is through a GoFundMe page. It's like, how do we pay for our, you get sick, you better build a GoFundMe. We become bankrupt if we get sick. God forbid we try to preventatively go, I think I'm getting sick. I am not functioning properly. I can't ignore this. And one theory I have is like, you use the word stuck, and it's like, there is this thinking in the United States also that it's like, you're going to get this job and you're going to do it for the rest of your life.
The rest of your life. It doesn't it hurts me to even think that way.
Yeah. Cause it's not true. It's not really true for anyone. There's very few people that have been doing the same thing for the last 30 or 40 years.
Yes.
So, I think sometimes I really want to wait tables. Like you would
be the best server ever.
I miss like the simplicity of like filling the waters.
Yeah.
And taking the orders and like bringing people food. Like, I love that. Now, I know people who are waiting tables and are stuck in that job are listening to me think, fuck you, Liliana, you charge $180 an hour to talk to someone. Like, I wish I was doing that. That's kind of my point though. Yeah. I'm like, what if we could kind of round table a little bit? What if it was less that like one job is paying this? I'm not trying to say we should all make the same exact amount of money, but if there was just some movement and some leniency and some creativity around like, shit, I'm going to take a couple weeks off and go work at this place and help my friends out who are running their restaurant. That sounds super fun. Like that's kind of what I'm working towards personally is all the different kind of things that we can do creatively to support each other, to help each other.
I was at a outdoor music festival long ago. And
it sounds like a previous life.
I know. BC. And I was hanging out with this kid from Denmark, I believe. And he was probably my age. So this was back a little whiles back. So I was like maybe 33 or 34. And he was telling me about his trip. He was going on a trip across America. This festival is here in Oregon, and he had just been to the Grand Canyon, and he was going to like, a couple more places. Basically, he was taking off the whole summer. He was taking off like three months, and he went around the United States. He went to a couple of places in South America, and then he went to another European country that I'd never been to for over these 3 months. And I was like, this is amazing. And in my mind, like the capitalist I am living in this country, I'm like, how can he afford it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Rarely will you hear like a European person being like, and where does the money come from? Right. It's a different world. Right. I'm like, how does he afford it? He's my age. Like, what's going on? And so as he's continuing to talk, and I'm like, I have to ask you, like, do you work from wherever you are? Like, do you work online or whatever? He's like, no, I'm taking a break from work. And I'm like, that's fantastic. What a blessing that you can. I have not created that so much in my life, that I can take big, long breaks like that. It's just, I have not created that yet. And I will one day.
I believe it. I'm in agreement.
Yes. And so he was like, no, I'm taking this break. And I said, oh, okay. And then later it came up like somebody else was in the conversation, and we were talking about what we do. And he was like, I work in a grocery store. And in my mind, I immediately was like, he must own it.
Right.
And then later, as we continue, because we hung out a lot, it turns out that he is a clerk in a grocery store. And by clerk, he means the person who actually checks people out.
You're like, let me explain what I mean by that.
He checked people out, and it was time for him. He felt like he wanted to take a break so he could find himself. And I guess in that country, there's like a stipend for that. And his job was waiting for him when he got back. So he had the money he saved from getting paid very well as somebody who checks things out. By the way, they can sit down there when they check things out. That's another thing. And then, so he used some of that money and the stipend from his country, who says, yes, you need to go find things out, go for it. And when he goes back, he's going right back to a job where he can sit down and check things out. And I was like, wow. The fighting that goes on here, the anger, the just toxicness. Can you imagine if we could give a single mom, look, you need to figure your stuff out, single mom? Absolutely. Go figure your stuff out. Take 2 years off and raise your kids, enjoy your life. And when you come back, like, our society has prepared like meaningful, dignified work for you, where you can take care of your body and work at the same time. That sounds normal, but in the way we live right now, it's radical. No wonder we're all searching, in this time of our lives, like, for the thing we need to do to clear our liver. And we're all, trying to heal our bodies in whatever way we can. And it's such a strange reality that we have accepted as normal.
Yeah. And you are doing an incredible job with your story, recognizing how fucked up that is normal for us.
Yeah.
And like, you're right. My first thought in my head when you were telling the story was like, oh, is he the child of a billionaire? Like, I wasn't even thinking millionaire. I was just like, is he a trust funder? Like,
must be
everything. And I think, people in this country just even want childcare. Like, they're not even asking for 2 weeks off or 2 years off or anything. It's just like, man, childcare that I could afford would be amazing. Cause a lot of people have to decide whether it's even worth it. I have to make a living, but I have to pay for it. And by the way, moms, we want to pay our childcare providers. Again, that goes back to that idea of like, that permission to have a job where you're getting paid well for something that's like human. It's a human experience.
Yes. I saw this meme. I love, there's millions of memes out there, but I love when there's like really succinct, perfect ones that like explain the big problem that everybody is debating over. And it's like at the core, this is it. And it was, I don't know exactly how they worded it. It was so perfect. And it was basically like, because they were talking about like the $17 an hour, the approval of the $17 an hour or whatever. And the meme basically was like, even if you made $20 an hour, you're still living paycheck to paycheck. And it was like in response to somebody being like, we should be happy that we're at $17 an hour, some senator or whatever. This is a privilege that you're getting paid. So, and the guy was just like, nah, dude. Like,
reality check.
Let's call a duck a duck. This is the era of calling a duck a duck. I want to go back to, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I want to go back to something that you're saying about anger. And I think it's important to address, especially since both of us are in, whether or not, however we decide to be in it, we are associated with and are in the world of like spirituality and healing and self-help, right? And we know there's a range, just like in any industry or any sort of community, of bullshit and abusiveness to like real deal healing and like integrity interaction, right? So, but we've both experienced like all of it, the range.
Yeah. Yep.
And so there's something that I'd love for you to talk about, and that is this idea that is definitely being dismantled a lot right now. But this thing about like, oh, I'm angry, so I must have done something to attract that anger, and these ideas of like is that we should be happy all the time. And if you're angry, it's actually negative. Because I remember when I first was sort of introduced into like spiritualism and all this stuff, and that was really common. It was, if you feel a quote unquote negative emotion like anger, that it's bad, you're bad, and you created it, and you're less spiritual or whatever. So do you have any stories about that? Or I'm sure you do.
You are like, I'm just like, I love you so much right now that you want to talk about this. This is literally what I have talked about ad nauseum for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even scratching the surface of everything I want to say about it. So first off, really what it is, the phrase we use now is spiritual bypass, which is great.
Yes.
It's thank God for that word. Thank you, whoever invented that word.
Yes.
But it's also just recycled religion. It's recycled like Catholicism.
Oh, yes.
So my mom, when I was a little kid, I would say, Mom, what did you want to be when you grew up, like kids do? And she'd be like, I wanted to be a nun. And I would just be like, what?
My mom too.
What? Oh my God.
Is your mom about 70? Is your mom about 70?
Oh, my mom passed away, but she would be. Yes.
Okay. Yep. My mom too. She wanted to be a nun.
Oh my God. I didn't even know that was a thing. Okay. I'm not alone in this.
I think it's definitely a thing.
She totally would tell me that she would go around, like as a teen girl, she would go from like nunnery to nunnery to nunnery to try to see which one she was going to join. She got pregnant, so it foiled her plans.
Okay.
She was a terrible nun, clearly. And so she would say, and lots of times I would sleep on the hard floor just to be closer to God. So this idea in Catholicism that like the more humble you are, the more you suffer, the more you like give of yourself, then the more pious and the more God will reward you, which we know is total bullshit because the church has so much money and it just circulates within the church and they don't really help people. And I'm not against religion, but I'm just saying it's an organization that's more mafia-esque. And so in order to control the people, we've had to make up stories. So the New Agers kind of take a version of that and recycle it for spiritual bypass, which is especially for people of color, so damaging because then you think to yourself, like, I must not be good enough or loved enough by the divine to be given these things. And I mean, it goes back to all these. Exactly. And these money books that I cannot stand that all these famous people do. And like, they start with like, okay, so I needed to pay my credit cards off. So my parents bought me a condo. I decided to sell that, use the profits of that to pay off my credit cards. And it's like, why would anyone want to, that is a real book, by the way.
Oh my God.
Why would anyone want to take, because the thing is, if you're fucking poor, your problem is not budgeting.
No, it's not. And
it is not budgeting. It is that every time
people are starting to just now understand that. Like I started seeing people on like one of the books I read, prosperity books once, was like, oh, all the things that you owe, and just put them on automatic in a bank account and let it pay itself off.
What?
I was like, but where does the money come from? And the person was answering questions. It was actually a video. The person answered the question is like, the thing I'm trying to get you to understand is that don't immerse your mind in these things you have to pay off. And I'm like, and the guy's like, yeah, but where does the money come from? Yep. And the guy couldn't answer it because he's a millionaire whose parents were millionaires. And it's, the things you pay off, you just put it over here and it comes from a bank account that has interest of like $3 million and you don't think about it.
Yep. And my favorite clients are some of the richest people. And I will tell you, they are good people who know that if you're rich, you don't think about money at all. And if you're poor, it's all you think about. And I loved working with them, but the rest of the world doesn't understand whether you're poor or you're rich. If you have that belief that if you don't have enough money, it's somehow your fault, it is such bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I think that a way that we can do that is start to have to clear this, have compassion for yourself and your hardship. So recently I posted on my Instagram, there's this woman, her name is going away from me, but she's like she's a money person. And she said she got really passionate because she identifies as LGBTQ. And so she's like, there is a different situation that you're up against when it comes to money. And so she does help people with budgeting, but she's coming up from the perspective of like, it's not your fault. Like there's challenges. Maybe you were cast out of your family at a young age because they didn't support who you are. And so now you don't have that generational wealth. And if you're not a white person, you don't have generational wealth in this country. So there's so many pieces to it. And so I think it's every time I watch a TikTok video that's like, here's how you do your DNA code for wealth. It's like, yes, I am an energy worker and I can tell you, you can clear pictures that are poverty pictures. You can clear death pictures, past life pictures. You can clear self-worth pictures.
Yes.
And it does help you, but the only thing it helps you do is say yes more easily when someone's offering you money and it's an affinity with you. That's all it's going to do. It isn't going to make it rain money like a lot of these white new agers who are out there that are just saying, here's how it is, 15 seconds a day. It's like, if you made intention towards anything, it's like when you learn a new word and you start to hear it everywhere, that's great. So put money on your radar. It's an energetic, it's an energy. So it's like what we're clearing as people who are maybe been in the minority or underserved populations, it doesn't work for us to think of it that way. Yeah. For a rich white person, they should definitely take that class about autopay. That's it. That's the only person that needs that class. I feel like, you know what? I'll pay your bills for you. You just give me $1 million a year and I'll handle it for you.
Sure. I'll start that service. No problem.
My dream nonprofit is you know how they have like pimp my car or like do something to my home. I feel like there should be like a nonprofit or television show that like goes to a single mom's place of work and cleans her car, right? Because every single mom's car is trash. You've got diapers in there, you've got snacks, you've got everything. And it's like, what if you came out from work and it was like a caddy organizer in the trunk of like everything. And it was all cleaned and vacuumed. And I'm like, that's how you make the world a better place.
Yes. I just saw there's something in this same energy. I just saw this online somewhere in Amsterdam. There's trash. I think it is Amsterdam. It's called trash fishing. And they take people out. Yeah, locals and tourists do it. So they take people out on these boats and then they go around the canals and they give a tour of the canals, but they also have like nets and they pick up trash as they go and they turn it all into this place that makes all sorts of really cool furniture, like beautiful furniture and different wares for the home out of the trash. And then it's like also a system of, they keep track of what they make. So like if you have a table and you don't like it anymore, you can bring it back to that place and they'll resell it and everything. And the pieces were like really cool. Like I really liked it, but that like what you're talking
giving
about,
me hope for humanity right now.
Strangely, I saw it on Facebook, which there's not a lot of positive stuff on Facebook.
You mean
as much as I put
Meta or whatever.
Oh. We're going to have another podcast session to even talk about what is happening. I'm telling you, my dreams recently
Tell me.
have been like, there's been a lot of weird, like robot, I guess they call it transhumanism, where it's like people merging with robots. And I've had a lot of dreams about robots and people. And I got to be really honest. I saw something on Facebook that gave me a little nervous breakdown. It was like growing a baby inside an electronic womb. And I was like, nope. Am I too old? I don't know if it's that I'm getting old fashioned. I just turned 39. I don't feel like
getting way
really
too
cool.
Matrix up in here.
Yeah. Like I just, what about like,
did you see the dog? It was on NPR. There was like, oh, is it like a robot killing dog for war? And it moved like a dog and act like a dog. And I'm a dog lover and I was horrified. And I just heard this woman who does AI stuff, and I will give it to you for the show notes, but she has like a nonprofit organizations. And she's like, hey, if we just keep funding research for war AI or like, software engineering that makes a bunch of money AI, like we're going to get in trouble, and you can't retrofit a lot of that research into something. So she's trying to fund AI, like from a human perspective of like, how could it make things better? So I think we have to find that middle ground. Like we can't be afraid of it, but we have to like add our voices to the table. So like, they're not growing babies in robot wombs. Like that's terrifying.
That one, like really, I was like, oh, I'm going to get off social media for like a good couple months, because that one just like,
you had a real lie down after that. Oh my God.
Really couldn't take, like, I couldn't take that. It hurt me really deep down. And okay, so what you're talking about, okay, it's really interesting. So a friend of mine is making this documentary right now, and when it becomes public, maybe I'll add it to the show notes. It's a beautiful documentary, elder wisdom, prophecy, talking about the world we live in and our what we're doing in this world. And he's talking about how when he started working with people who want to fund things and where he puts his energy and focus, he realized that it's important to put it on what could be created for a future rather than fighting something we don't like. Right. And I think that's kind of that energy that woman is in. And I've definitely had like that sort of spiritual or ancestral message come to me in my own personal life, because I'll tell you, when I started teaching like quote unquote anti-racism from a spiritual perspective, the caveat of that is that it wasn't really anti-racism. I used the word so that people knew what I was talking about so they could find me. But when I started like teaching that, I did summits and interviews, and I ended up being in a place where I was with a lot of activists, and I wouldn't self-proclaim myself as an activist, but I found that a lot of what I wasn't liking in social justice and activism was, we have to fight. And the fighting begets fighting. And it was like I felt like it was just feeding a war. And I saw it in the communities. I saw it in the Facebook groups. I saw it in the work that they were doing. Sometimes they would create some really awesome stuff, but there always seemed to be like some big resistance that was keeping it from really flourishing. And so you're saying this woman is, asking people to start focusing on creating something that's good for humans, that builds and everything. And this is a theme in prophecy. It's a theme, obviously, in the AI world that's emerging. I've seen evidence over and over again that in my own life, if I focus on like, this is what I want to see. And when I try to fight against the haters on my Facebook, like when I was doing all the videos, when I try to be like, oh, this thing that women are experiencing, I'm going to teach them how to be warriors and fight. No, but let's be the peaceful warriors. The peaceful warrior knows that fighting is not the first option. It's the last one, really.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's where we are as humans, is like, let's build what we want to see. Let's create a new world and something that benefits human beings. And I believe with AI and electronics, this isn't Mad Max. It's not like, or not Mad Max. Sorry. This is a wrong reference.
This isn't Mad Max.
What's the reference with Kurt Russell, the Kurt Russell movie where like he has a switch? It's from the 80s. He has a switch, and when he switches it, all electronics die. Oh, it's a famous movie.
Oh God, I'm sorry. I don't know it.
Somebody knows. Somebody will just tell me in the comments if anybody knows. Yeah,
You're
somebody else,
making
but
me think of a book, and I'm spacing on it. Of course, I'm like looking around at my room at my bookshelf, because she is like an herbalist and a midwife, and she
yeah.
talks about activism, and
Yes.
she uses it from that kind of permaculture perspective of like the mushrooms and
Hmm.
mycelium, and what you're saying, which is like we need to kind of have another approach. And also cancer, like it's also how we talk about cancer, like people who are fighting that are kind of given the language of fight it, and it's this
Yes.
thing that is against you. And it's like um we want our cells to differentiate self from non-self. We don't want them to
Yeah.
just go, 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 right? Because that's
Yes.
how you get a tumor. It just keeps going and going and going and going and growing.
Yeah.
And you actually want to turn off the part that's overworking, which is
Okay.
again a liver idea.
Okay.
And you want to differentiate self from non-self. Like you were saying earlier when you said some projects are good for me, some are not. And you
Yes.
were noticing the culture of the activism work. You were like, these are not my people in this way,
Yes.
but you're still building a team and saying there are many of us activists who are trying to like be strengthened numbers in the other way of like you
Yes.
saying, I'm burnt out. I can't fight like this anymore. And I'm like, take care of yourself. Like I'll be at the post, I'll be
Yeah.
the hyper vigilant person keeping you safe, which is, it's hard when you're moving in the world, and for me, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, yeah. Yeah.
So my awakening was at 13, going from a very diverse culture in California to coming to Oregon, which, has so many just closed-minded um, people. And
Mm.
I'm not even talking about like Republicans. I mean, white liberals can be exactly the same. And at 13, I had such a shock, because it was like, wow, it was so different when people were asking me like where I was from and what was I and all these things, because I didn't understand it was anything more than human. I was used to being in environments where there's just lots of different cultures and different languages and people who
Yep.
look all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, that's
And
how
I
I
was
grew up
taking
as
this,
well. Yeah.
I bet you have some stories to tell.
I do. And I will tell them eventually, but I feel that deeply, like that you have an identity as human, like color and all that stuff just doesn't really come up on your radar so much.
Yeah, and still until start people in society start to make you feel othered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I was taking this class on the brain and like neuroscience and racism, and it was talking about I was taking this class on neuroscience and the brain with racism and how like that happens. And they were talking about like your stages of identity, like the identity of your race and how different it is for white people versus people of color,
Yeah.
and just getting othered in the process. And I got an incredible healing, like learning this. But people would look at me. It even happens to me now when I'm like walking around, like I'll just, the other day, two little white ladies were like, "Oh, honey, look at that girl. She's so exotic looking." And like I can't hear them. And I'm just like, what,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
constant comments about my skin tone and if I come back from Hawaii and what, they just can't figure me out. And he talked about how in the brain, the way the brain takes in faces, if you've never seen a type of face before, it's almost like they can't see you. And I am oversimplifying something so much more complex.
Oh, I can hear the implications coming though. Please keep going.
For the first time for me, I was like, wow, like they couldn't see me. Like their brain literally couldn't put me into any box. And so I have all these years of emotional labor of having to explain who I am. And but it did help me a little bit not personalize it as much, because you do feel like when you're constantly asked that every single place you go,
yes,
it is so fatiguing. And it was only until my 12-year-old, I've told this story before, but my daughter was like, we were rushing around to go someplace, and the whole thing started again. I was trying to get out of there. We're trying to get someplace. And it started with like, "Oh, did you just come back from Mexico or Hawaii?" Or like, "You're so tan," or whatever. And my daughter watched me do the thing I do every time, like trying to be polite, like, no, I'm just more melanated and da 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 da. And we're in Oregon. And I got in the car and my daughter was mad at me. She was just like, I am so angry. She's like, you do not ever have to tell anyone why you are the color you are.
Wow.
And she's gotten to the point of holding up her white arm, because I have a very Caucasian child.
Yes.
And saying next to my arm, we spend the same amount of time in the sun together. Like she's just like taking over describing it. Like we have somewhere to be. Like we're not going to talk about this here, arm in arm. Next, please put our groceries through. We're going.
That's beautiful. Good for her for like being powerful about that at such a young age.
I got such a healing from that, Alexandra. I was just like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going through these motions. And like, I don't have to be rude, but maybe I don't need to be so dang nice. And I'm nice because I don't want to get in trouble, or I need my fucking groceries. Like there's all these reasons I'm doing it. But I had that reflected to me, and I just felt so empowered from that.
I'll tell you, like when I moved so I didn't grow up in this country, and I moved to this country. I grew up in an international community, and I didn't grow up with like a race identity, like Black or African American, which is why people hear me say all the time, like the race that the system imposes on you. I'm looking for all these different ways to be like, let's separate from if you want, because some people embrace whatever the identity they're given. But for people who are like me, who it doesn't make sense to identify with something that is not aligned with me, then I'm looking for all the different phrases to explain, which I don't even want to explain. But anyway, so my experience was people would say, "What are you?" Now, I am obviously like brown. I have brown skin, but I think it was just the age I was and the way I carried myself. I'm not really American. And like, there was something about, I'm American by passport. My parents are American, but I was born and raised overseas. So there's something about me. I carry myself a little differently where people can tell there's something off. So people would ask me, what are you? First of all, not like, what are you mixed with, or, where are you from? What's your hair? What are you?
So rude.
It's so rude. And they don't even know, because no one's asking them those questions, So I'm already like sort of commodified. And so then the questioning would just go on and about my history and my parents and all this stuff. And I thought that was culturally. Now I traveled the world, and you learn by how other people, like relationships you form, right? And so I try to follow suit. So I thought for years that in the United States, how people relate to each other was that phrase. Was like, first of all, asking about where are you really from? Where's your blood from? Why do you look the way you look? I thought that was normal. And so I would do that to other people, and people would be like, you're being so invasive, this, that, and other. It was only, now I went through like race identity crisis for over 10 years. It was only like maybe, I'm still learning things that were happening back then that I'm like, that's what that was.
Yes.
That's,
yes. I'm telling you, I took this class. I got this kid in my car telling me, why are you? And I'm like, I am 42-year-old woman, and I am still figuring it out.
It's, and I'm glad we are. And I also want to say, like, when it comes to activism and stuff, like there's a lot of activists who are down there in the streets who are like keeping the focus on things that need to have focus. So I know that there's a role, there's a role for like all sorts of activism. I just would like all activists and activist groups and communities to be in a position where they can also take care of themselves and not expend so much energy on things that are also hurting them and also pulling away from their intention, right? Of what they want to create. But
you're making such a good point. Yes.
Right. But I'm just really grateful we're living in a time where it seems like the energy of everything we're experiencing, and the physics, the science, the spirit, the technical stuff, and the reflection of the structures we're living in is all coming together. And we're seeing how everything is connected, and so many healing modalities, so many healing ways of thinking are coming up in our existence. And it's easy to forget that if you spend a lot of time on Facebook. It's a easy thing to forget if you're not in contact with a lot of human beings. It's also very easy to forget if you yourself are steeped in or around a lot of people who are living in fear and unexpressed emotions like anger.
Yeah. Nice way to wrap it back around to the anger.
Right?
I mean, because the anger is fire and that
Oh.
fire is activism and it's like standing up for yourself and it's righteous rage. And that's so productive because you
Yeah.
can channel that into something, right? The
Yes.
grief and the sorrow and the victimization and the feeling traumatized that we all experience is the watery energy. It's Liliana
Yeah.
watering and crying when she really wants to be in her fire, right?
Mm.
So you're making me think about activism. There was a story I read, it was in England somewhere, I think, and the government had put a spy against the climate activists for like 15 years. There was this person who worked basically for the police and
Wow.
wasn't really a climate activist and was just trying to get them caught, like a
Mhm.
sting operation,
Yeah.
which is so intense to think about. And
Yeah.
they interviewed these activists and they were just like, I'm so burnt out, I'm done. When I learned Frank, I'm gonna make up his name, when
Yeah.
Frank was a bad guy, like I just can't, I give up, fine, let the world burn. I don't know what to do anymore.
Wow.
And I think your point is if we stay at that fire level, we're gonna burn out. And so we
Yes.
need all of these elements.
Yes. It's radical and also our birthright to be able to heal ourselves and to seek healing. And with everything going on, and we've talked about a lot of it, there's also things we didn't talk about. One of the very clear prophecies that I follow, it's not something that it's not in a book, it's not written down, it's something that comes through like my own temple work and through West Africa, is that what we're experiencing is the end of a way of being. I'm sure it's not only coming out of Africa. I'm sure there are other prophecies. I've read other prophecies that confirm this. This isn't like things are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. They might get worse before they get better, but
Yeah.
we are at the end of an era and the way we were doing things in that era, all that stuff is breaking down. It might seem like there's all these control things coming and, all of these new structures that and ideas and concepts and things being put into place that will hurt us more in the long run. But those things are really not sustainable. And we don't want to, enough people are awake and don't want to sustain those things. And so we are at this end of an era, and the new era, I believe that there's healing and there's knowing ourselves better and there's community and there's how we can live next to each other, even if we have differences, and still love and respect each other and give each other dignity. I think that's the new world that's coming. And I believe that we're going to experience it in our lifetime. I don't think it's that far off.
I'm going to hold that vision with you. I think to make your point a little bit further, when you're
Yeah.
talking about that, is what I teach in my work is the shadow energy, the parasitic. And so when you're having all these dreams about like robot people and AI stuff that's really scary,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say earlier, and you're saying it now, that is the past. Because
Yes.
if you think about how we've gotten here with industrialization, robots is the only way to explain it. Like zombies, like people are zombies, right? Like very rich people who are like, oh, I can just frack and destroy all the clean water. Like you can't be a human and actually think that's okay. You are turned
Yes.
off. The shadow is moving through you. You're a zombie. You're not a human anymore. I'm not saying that because I want to villainize these people or
Yes.
harm them or anything. But if you can think about that from a neutral perspective, like, oh, that person just isn't a human.
Yes.
Someone, for me, it's in the daily of like getting rid of my grass in my front yard that I don't need to keep wasting water and I'm growing food and I live in a neighborhood. So I'd love to have a farm, but I don't. And so I'm working with what I have. Like, I don't want to be a zombie and just keep
Yeah.
adding water that is so precious. I want to grow food with it. And I'm teaching
Beautiful.
myself because nobody taught me and I'm learning how to do it myself. And so that's the new world order that you're talking about, which is like no one is coming to save us. No one is coming to rescue us, but we need to stand up for what we believe, say no to things that are continuously destroying the earth. And what is a little change you can do?
Yeah.
You and me are doing that.
Yeah, because we can't change everything. We tend to, especially, I know you do this. We want to hold the whole world on
I
top of our
do.
shoulders. We have to fix everything. We have to fix our community and all of our kids' lives and our friends and their kids' lives too. And
Right now.
right now, before we go to bed tonight.
Yes.
In the bath, I'm saving the world. Like
Before
that's how
we
I
go
live
to
my
bed
life.
tonight. Yes.
And so what this a lot of what I love what you said, but especially this point right here of What are the little things I can do? Remember that we still do live in this system. There are things that are going that us ourselves by ourselves, we can't change that one thing, but what are the little things that we can do and give to the generation below us and the people around us? And that will just keep having ripple effect. The way all this toxicity that we experience, that was built the same way, little by little by little. We can do the same thing in a different focus, in a different direction. Absolutely. We're capable. Liliana,
thank you so much.
I'm so glad you were here with me. I just have two more questions. This is how we end the podcast. And this is the first question. If Liliana of 15 years ago were to come into your dwelling and sit down, what wisdom would you share with her?
I would just say, damn girl, you're so hot. You're so fine. You're so cute. You're so sweet. And
big ups.
And you don't need to take care of these partners anymore. You don't need to heal them. Just go be your free bird self.
Beautiful. I love it. Self-encouragement goes a long way.
Well, do you ever do that to yourself where you look at a picture of yourself from like 15 years back and you're just like, damn, I was cute, or like, damn, I was adorable, or
Yes. And sometimes, wow, in that time I was worrying about something I thought was so big and it was not at all. That happens to me a lot. I used to be a big worrier in survival mode. So I experienced all those things. And that's a good exercise too, to like, just look at you and be like, you're awesome. And you still, my last question, Liliana Barzola, what is your blessing for this world?
I really hope that we can co-create. And I want to co-create with you. So if you're listening to this now, find someone to support your dream and help you get that basic co-creative joy and creativity going.
Yeah. Thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you so much. I just have to say, one, you are an incredible interviewer.
Oh, thank you. I'm learning as I go.
You did incredible. You're so fun.
Oh, thank you.
I had to clear my throat. But I really just want to say that I love working with you in whatever capacity it is, because I always learn so much. And I really love, you have such a unique experience, especially for Oregon, having like grown up all over and your understanding of different cultures. So every time I'm hanging out with you, you tell me like a story about a friend or a place or something. And so I really hope that these stories keep coming out in your podcast and these conversations, because I love getting these tidbits of wisdom from you.
Oh, thank you.
I also just think you're like so fun. I hope we go to the beach again. That's all.
Yes. Beach trip. As soon as it gets warm, we'll bring all the dogs and all the kids and all the friends. We'll eat out there and we'll have a campfire. I'm down.
Yay.
It's happening. Thank you
so much for having me.
Mwah. Mwah. The original and healthy beats for this podcast were created by Quincy Davis. His details are in the show notes. Woke Wisdom podcast episodes are written, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alexandra Loves. My guests, of course, bring their own wisdom. If you have any questions you want me to answer on the podcast, you can email me at wokewisdompodcast@gmail.com, or even better, text the podcast at 601-301-6974. I would be so grateful if you helped me share these messages far and wide by boosting the podcast with good reviews on Apple Podcasts, or by sharing the episodes with friends and groups and families on social media. That would be so awesome. It just takes a few moments and a few clicks. Click, 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 clickety, click. Be blessed, and I'll see you next week. Oh, one more thing. They told me I needed a disclaimer, so cue the music. Let's do this. The information in all podcast episodes and corresponding materials of the Woke Wisdom podcast with Alexandra Loves are provided for general, informational, and explorative purposes only. It is not professional advice. Any content provided by Alexandra Loves, guests, bloggers, sponsors, or authors are of their own opinion and not intended to defame, slander, or malign any person, place, or thing. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or attached material. Alexandra Loves and her guests are not therapists, counselors, physicians, unless otherwise stated. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast or corresponding materials to treat any mental, physical, or medical condition in either yourself or others. Please seek out appropriate professionals for help. Privacy matters to the Woke Wisdom podcast. People, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast may be changed to protect confidentiality. Through this podcast and corresponding materials, you're able to link to other websites which are not under the control of this podcast or Alexandra Loves. The inclusion of any links does not necessarily imply a recommendation or endorse the views expressed within them. In no event is the Woke Wisdom podcast or Alexandra Loves liable for any loss or damage, including without limitation, indirect or consequential loss or damage, or any loss and damage whatsoever arising from your interaction with this podcast or corresponding materials. This podcast and all corresponding materials should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. This podcast and all corresponding material is owned and copyrighted by Alexandra Loves. You are welcome to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge the Woke Wisdom podcast with Alexandra Loves as the source of the material. You may not, except without our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. Email wokewisdompodcast@alexandraloves.com to attain written permission.